The institution of marriage itself is grounded, or rather I would say founded, on concepts of duty rather than desire. Hello and welcome back to nibblepop. We will be continuing today with our textual reading of Shakuntala by Kalidasa. If you have not yet watched the other videos in this series, please look in the description box. I will give the link of all the videos related to Shakuntala. We will be doing Act 5 today, and we will see how this act becomes a very important one in the plot of the whole play. We will see how the world of nature, which has been the backdrop of the first 4 acts, now disappears from the play as we enter into a whole new arena, the urban landscape. We will see how the characters whom we have known so far in a certain light, they act differently, and how different shades come out in their characters. We will also delve into the question of the position of woman in the context of marriage, in the context of relationships. So stay with me till the end of this class so that we can discuss all these things through a very detailed analysis of important lines in the 5th act of Shakuntala. If you haven't subscribed yet, do so immediately. Just like the other acts, this also begins with a prelude, and the name of this act, or the subtitle you can say of this act, is The Repudiation of Shakuntala. The act begins with the setting of the court, where we see the Chamberlain talking about his duties, talking about the city life, and to some extent we get introduced to King Dushyanta working as the governor of the whole place. We will just skip to the part where the king enters, and we see him as a different man here. When we first saw Dushyanta, he was acting like a teenager in love, although he was taking care of responsibilities like making sure that the sages, they have a peaceful ceremony free from demons. He was helping them out. But mostly we have seen the softer side of Dushyanta, the part which he definitely chooses to conceal when he is acting as the ruler or the king in his court. So his words, his first words in the act are interesting. King, wearied by the burden of administrative duties, he says, every man who gains the object of his desire is happy. Only to kings does the gain itself bring misery. So whenever a man wishes to have something and then has it, that man becomes happy. But when a king wishes to have something, expands his power, then that brings more burden of responsibility. He is talking about material wealth here, or he is talking about royal responsibilities here, but there is this oblique reference to things which we know, the episodes he had with Shakuntala. He desired her, and then after he got her, we will see how that brought him more misery. He continues, attainment of sovereignty. Sovereignty means kingship. When a person becomes a king, merely lays to rest the eager craving of expectancy. So you expect to become something, you expect some royal prize when you become a king. Guarding what is gained lays on one a weight of care. So when you become a king, your responsibility becomes more tough because now you have to protect your kingship. And therefore, he here mentions or talks about the obligations that a king has to bear. Kingship, like an umbrella, held in one's own hand, tires more than it removes tiredness. So when you use an umbrella to protect yourselves from harsh sun rays or rain, it also tires your hands. So kingship is just like that. It is giving you something but taking away from you that happiness which other men enjoy. Anyway, so we will just go down to the part where the real action begins to happen. But before that, a little small episode is very interesting. While the king is sitting with his friend Madhavya, who is also the court jester or Vidushak, they hear someone singing in the inner quarters. Lady Hamsavati, one of the queens of Dushyanta, she is singing, and notice the words. "O you honey pilfering bee, greedy as ever for fresh honey, once you lovingly kissed the mango's fresh spray of flowers, is she then forgotten so soon? You are content now merely to stay within the full-blown lotus." So she is complaining. She is complaining about a bee who is attracted to a mango blossom, which is very tiny, but it has a beautiful smell. And then, after tasting the honey of that blossom, the bee flies off and stays with the lotus flower. So what she is trying to say is that somehow, despite being a queen, she feels abandoned. And she feels that the king is now interested in some other flower and she is left all alone. And the king recognizes this complaint and says, he smiles, "Yes, once I loved her deeply. She is taunting me now for my neglect of her." And then he does something very interesting. "Madhavya, my friend, do go to Queen Hamsavati and tell her that I have taken to heart the reproof that she has conveyed so subtly." So he asks Madhavya to go and communicate to his queen, who is feeling so sad, that the king has understood why you were singing this. So he does not go to her directly. One thing is that now is his office hours and he is at the court. He doesn't want to go away from his public duty on a personal ground. But at the same time, it becomes very peculiar that he is sending another man to go and convince his wife that he still loves her. And then after Madhavi goes away, the king is seen to speak to himself. He is speaking in a soliloquy. That song I just heard. So he's talking about the song of Hamsavati. That song I just heard, a restless, yearning sadness. Yearning means something which is full of desire, full of longing. So that song has an impact on him. Steals into my heart. Though I am not separated from someone I love deeply, he feels that he is with his queens and he is definitely not away from somebody that he loves. So here, as audience, we realize that he has forgotten everything about Shakuntala. But somewhere deep down, he has a faint recollection of loss. So the point is, he has forgotten the happy memories, but he has somehow managed to retain that sense of misery that he's away from somebody he loves. Or can it be that when a sadness ineffable falls suddenly like a shadow over the heart, even while one is wrapped in happiness, so he feels that he's wrapped in happiness, he has everything he wants, he desires, and then he suddenly feels sad. So why is that? The mind trills spontaneous, unknown to itself, to an intimation from the past, as if something has happened in the past which is making me sad now, something which I cannot remember. Quickened by some fleeting loveliness, there is a memory of a loveliness going, fleeting across his mind. Or haunting sounds of exquisite music heard, lasting impressions of love's remembrance. So he is thinking that maybe something was there in my past, and not just the past of this life. He's actually talking about a former life. Live on in us from former lives. Now, in Hindu religion, there is this concept of reincarnation. Hindu people think that when you die, you are reborn, and somehow the sum total of your actions, your karma, that passes on to your next birth, determining how happy or how sad you will be, or how you are going to correct your karma and all that stuff. He is also saying that maybe in some previous births, in some former lives, I had some memories which have transferred themselves from that life to this life, because he cannot exactly remember any incident, any person with whom he can associate this sadness which he is feeling now. Very emotional. And then the Chamberlain comes, announces that hermits have come, holy people have come along with women from Kanna, and the king is a bit surprised that why have these people come, especially the women. He wishes to meet them, of course, and we will just skip to the part where Gautami and Shakuntala and Kanna's pupils, they come. And after the initial exchanges of greetings, they greet each other. The king greets the sages, they greet him back and bless him and all. Then the king is a bit intrigued. He is a bit curious because Shakuntala, her face is hidden in a veil. So her body is visible, of course, and the king is intrigued. He is curious to know who the lady is. And he says, that lady, who may she be standing veiled? I wonder. So she's having a covering over her face. The loveliness of her form, like a bud not burst into bloom, is barely revealed. So her body is barely visible because of the shroud or because of the covering that she is using. She appears in the midst of ascetics, a tender sprout among yellowing leaves. So the ascetics or the sages or the people who renounce this world, stay in the ashram, the king is comparing them to yellowing leaves because they have forsaken the energy of the youth, the greenery of the youth, to pursue serious contemplation of God. Therefore, they are compared to yellowing leaves, and Shakuntala is somehow a mismatch. He doesn't know her name yet. He thinks that that lady is not, it's a very extraordinary sight to see that lady among people who do not look like her. Vetravati, a courtier, he says, surely she does appear to be very beautiful, worth looking at, sire. And the king says, enough, it is highly improper to stare at another's wife. Now, this is a sentiment which we also see in plays like Mrichakatika, where a very similar sentence is uttered by Charudattu when he first looks at Vasantha Sena. The concept of another's wife and the sins associated with looking at another's wife is deep rooted in the culture of Hinduism or in the culture of India, because somehow it is associated with adultery and somehow also treating women as objects belonging to another person. So he should not stare at that woman because she might be the wife of somebody else. This is a noble thing to say, but again, some statements can have multiple interpretations. Shakuntala, she is speaking to herself. She is very nervous and she says, why are you trembling, O heart? Remembering the love my Lord has for me, calm yourself. So she is trying to reassure herself. Because what did Shakuntala expect? She expected, at least anybody in her position would have expected, that if the king saw the hermits or the sages from Kanno's ashram, if he saw a woman with them, he would immediately recognize her. He would, scream with joy, will be excited to meet her. That is what she would have expected. But she is trying to calm herself, trying to logically explain to herself that things should be done in a proper manner. And she is still hopeful, optimistic. And then the king wishes to know about the message of Kanno, and he asks, what are the commands of His Holiness? And Sankarava, he simply delivers Kanno's message word by word, and he says, you took her, my daughter. So you see, Sankarava is not giving him information. He is simply being a messenger here. And he is actually referring to Shakuntala as my daughter because he is giving Kanno's message. Alright, because Shakuntala is of course not Shankarava's daughter in any case. He says, you took her, my daughter, in secret as your wife, pleased. I have assented to the marriage, so I have no problem with that. We regard you as foremost among those of high worth. You are a very great king. And Shakuntala is virtue's embodiment, and she is also amazing. Having brought together a bride and groom of equal merit, the Creator, after a long time, incurs no reproach. So there is no objection from God. God has given approval. I have given approval. She bears your child. So take her as your lawful wife and partner in all religious duties. Now, usually the wife is referred to as Sahadharmini, which means she performs the same dharma or religious rituals as the husband. That is the basis of their union. So Kanno wishes to get Shakuntala accepted by Dushyanta. Gautami, he also wishes to add a few words, and she says, you did not approach the elders in the matter. She did not seek advice from her kinsfolk. So she gives the king the conditions under which the marriage was performed, that you did not consult us, she did not ask us. When it was all agreed upon between you two, what in the world can one say to either? So she is actually referring to this Gandharvya form of marriage where no witnesses are required, no social ceremonies or rituals are observed or performed. And she says that it was a mutual consensus, and we don't have any objection. Shakuntala is still not speaking out. She is speaking to herself. What will my lord say now? The king, he listens to whatever Sankarava has to say, whatever Gautami has to say, and then he expresses his doubts. What kind of proposition is this that is being placed before me? So he is not able to understand the whole thing because he doesn't remember a thing. And Shakuntala's immediate reaction is, his words are fire in my ears. She understands that he's denying everything. Sankarava is angry. What means this? This talk of a proposition being placed before you? Your honor is doubtless quite conversant with the ways of the world, so you are aware of marriage, commitments, and you are asking us the meaning of the proposition, or you're talking this as a proposition. We're not proposing anything. The world suspects even the most virtuous woman as otherwise when with her husband living, the parental home becomes her sole resort. So he now talks about a social reality that even when a woman is virtuous and lives in the parents' house while her husband is alive, people talk about that woman behind her back, questioning her decency, questioning her honor. Hence, her kinsfolk, her relatives, wish that she be beside him because her husband is alive, who took her by the hand as his wife, be she dear to him or be she not. You might not like your wife. You might not, have a good feeling about your wife. She might be dear to you. She might not be dear to you. But that is out of the question. Her place is beside you. So while the Gandharvya marriage presupposes the concept of love, desire, all these things, the arrangement of marriage itself, the institution of marriage itself is grounded, or rather I would say founded on concepts of duty rather than desire. So Sankarava says, we don't care if you like her, if you don't like her, she has to be with you. King says, are you saying that this lady is already married to me? Shakuntala is scared now. Sankarava is continuing to speak. Is this revulsion from a deed done or disregard for one's own actions? So are you trying to deny what you have done, or you don't want to own what you have done, or turning away from one's duty? The king is not convinced. He says, this is a case of proceeding on a wrong assumption. So you people are making a mistake. Now, see, if we take for granted that curses are real, that Dushyanta is really, he has forgotten because of the curse, then we cannot blame Dushyanta here because he truly doesn't remember. But then see what he says. Shangrila, he says, such fickleness generally swells and comes to a head in those drunk with power. You are powerful, you are a wealthy king, so you are able to say all this, you are able to deny everything. And the king is saying, why are you judging me like this? I am being taken to task too harshly. And then Gautami does something very desperate. She wants the king to look at the face of Shakuntala. So now she is using the body of Shakuntala as a last resort, that maybe he can recognize her if he looks at her. The king looks at Shakuntala and a conflict begins to emerge in his heart. He cannot remember her, but he cannot stop feeling attracted towards her, because in the first place he felt attracted towards Shakuntala when he was in the forest. So he hasn't changed as a man. So the qualities which had attracted him there are still present in Shakuntala, and no doubt he is feeling attracted again, and he's feeling bad that he is feeling attracted towards another man's wife. He says, I cannot permit myself to possess it, nor can I bring myself to relinquish it. I cannot let her go. I cannot enjoy her. No, this is wrong. So he is, suffering through some doubts now. And he's not speaking. Sankarava says, why are you silent? What is the meaning of the silence? The king openly confesses, O hermits, rich in holiness, try as I might, I cannot recall to my mind accepting the hand of this lady in marriage at any time. I don't remember. Seeing that she is plainly pregnant, how can I receive her when I have doubts about being the husband? I mean, she could be bearing another man's child. I cannot do that because I'm a king. If I accept another man's wife, and then if that person's child becomes my child, and that child of another person becomes the king of this place after I die. So he wants to make sure that his actions as a man are not in conflict with his responsibilities as a king, because a king cannot take free decisions like a normal man can. That is usually the argument a king places. Shakuntala is very, very sad, and Sankarava says something very interesting here. Then don't accept. Assenting gladly to your seizure of his daughter, the good sage makes you worthy of such a gift. Okay, don't accept. But since you have put your eyes on her, since you have seized her, so Karno wants you to have Shakuntala as a prize. as a robber is offered the goods he seized. So here he is directly comparing Shakuntala to goods. We have seen this in the previous act itself, where the woman is referred to as the wealth of the family, Lakshmi of the family. And therefore, this is a very interesting logic that you have been with Shakuntala and therefore she is offered to you. Now again, I am reminded of a very harsh social reality in the movies, especially in the Bollywood movies which were made in and around 90s, 80s, 70s. There was this concept that a man, he violates a woman some way, and when the family wants justice, they want that man to marry that woman. As if a rapist, if a violator, if a molester accepts that woman whom he has, attacked as his wife, then that woman gets justice. This was the concept of justice, social concept of justice, which we see reflected in popular movies. Nobody questioned the illogic behind it or the lack of logic behind it, because what kind of justice is given, or whether is it a justice at all, if that woman is actually asked to live her whole life with a man who had no regard for her consent, who had no regard for her emotions. So the same kind of logic is seen here, that since he had been with Shakuntala, he had a relationship with her, and now she is bearing his child, then she should stay with him, no matter if he likes her or not. Anyway, so what happens after this is very sad, that Shakuntala herself now comes out of her silent position and speaks out. She says, "What can I say when such a love has suffered such a change? What use is it reminding him of it now?" She is asking the right question. See, she's saying that I don't accept this as a solution, that I have to live with him if he doesn't love me, doesn't remember me. I don't want to pursue him to remember me. She is showing extreme sense of self-worth here. Whereas other people all around, especially her own kinsfolk rather, they are degrading her position. She is saying that I don't think it is good that we have to pressurize him to remember me. On the other hand, I should defend myself and clear my name. So she speaks because she wants to clear her name. She doesn't speak because she wants to go back to Dushyanta, wants to convince. She doesn't want to convince Dushyanta. She wants to clear her honor. "Dear Lord, no, my right to address you as such has been questioned. So I cannot call you dear Lord. Prince of the Purus." So now she addresses the king in a formal way. "In the hermitage, you deceived me. A simple girl, trusting and open by nature. Then you made a solemn compact. Now, to disown me with such words, is this becoming of you?" So she is clearly admonishing the king. She is a bit angry, of course. Now the king stops his ears. He is not used to such words from a woman. We have seen how his wives talk about him or to him. Through music, they try to communicate their sorrow. They do not come out in the open and address him directly that, "Why have you forgotten me? Why you are going to other queen's room?" They take these indirect methods of conversation with the king. And here, the woman who claims to be his wife, who is not assured of her position, she has these, words for him, which clearly show that she's a strong woman. Perish the sinful thought! Why are you out to sully your family's honor and to make me fall? You are like a river that crumbles its banks to muddy its crystal stream. So he is trying to tell Shakuntala that you are like a river, and if you are not running your proper course, then you end up in a muddy trail and uproots the tree growing by its edge. So you are being a destructive woman here. You are not supposed to be like this. Shakuntala replies, if you are proceeding in this manner under the impression that I am another man's wife, I can remove your suspicion by showing this highly prized token. She brings out or tries to bring out that ring to show the king that she truly belongs to him. The king says, okay, right, you show me whatever I've given you. And then she tries to find the ring, locate the ring. Ha! I'm lost. The king is missing from my finger. The most important thing that happens in this play is Shakuntala losing the ring, and we do not see that on stage. We come to know about it, but we do not see that incident. We do not see the wedding of Dushyanta. We do not see the loss of the ring. So what Kalidasa is doing is he is giving you a play of dialogue and not a play of action. Actions happen off stage. It is mostly commentary on the action that we see on stage. And this is primarily because Kalidasa was a poet at heart, more than a playwright. And he believed in the power of conversation to bring out dramatic elements. So we get to know about this loss of the ring through Gautami's words. The ring must have slipped off and fallen into the water when you immersed yourself in the holy Sachi pool next to Indra's landing. So, Indra's landing is Indraprastha. She had lost this ring while taking a bath. The king thinks that this is all part of a decorated lie. And he says, a good example of the ready wit that is womankind's gift. He is being very sexist in his comment. He says that women have these natural abilities to formulate words and lie on the face, and he is not ready to believe them anymore. And then Shakuntala is now acting in a desperate manner because she has lost every ounce of evidence that she has. And now she says that, okay, I don't have anything with me, but I can give you some memories. I can talk about things that happened and maybe you'll remember. And then she says, you do remember that day in the bower of canes covered by vines, you held a cup of lotus leaves filled with water? The king doesn't say he remembers. He says, I'm listening. Just at that moment, the little fawn, my adopted son, whom I had named Liquid Long Eyes, came trotting up, feeling affectionate towards him. You held the cup out, saying, let him drink first, and coaxed him to drink. So they were trying to get this fawn, a young deer, drink water from a lotus cup. But he would not come near because you were a stranger to him. When I took the cup from you and held it in my hand, he was happy to drink, and you laughed, saying, one trusts one's own kind, you are both creatures of the woods. So she tries to make him remember. But the point is, this is such a harsh world that even if he remembers, will that be enough? I doubt it. Because if this woman's word were enough, then we wouldn't have needed that mysterious divine voice confirming to Konno about the sanctity of this marriage. And the king is sarcastic. He says, by such honeyed words are pleasure-loving men lured by young women out to gain their own ends. Yes, you have a lovely way with words. So he is insulting her. And when Gautabi says that she doesn't know all these manipulations you are talking about, you are saying that this woman is a manipulator, she doesn't know all these. And then the king says that everybody can be a manipulator. Even the kaku, a natural being, manipulates the crow into believing that the crow is raising a crow's child, but it's actually hatched from a cuckoo's egg. Shakuntala now is very angry and she says, "Ignoble man," she's directly now addressing him. "You who are like a well covered with grass, you judge everyone by the measure of your own heart. You call me a manipulator because you are one. Who would stoop to imitate your conduct? Practicing falseness while putting on the mantle of virtue? You are being the symbol of righteousness. This is what you do." The king feels that this lady's anger looks real, but then he doesn't have his memories to support it. And he says openly that, "See, my life is like an open book. Everybody can see it." And Shakuntala replies, "Oh, so you are the sole measure, and only you know the firm rule of righteousness for the world. You decide what is right, you decide what is wrong. Women who have set aside their modesty, they understand nothing. They know nothing, is it? So now, because I can speak my mind, I am not being a bashful, shy woman, I'm speaking out. So you think that I am not speaking the truth. Very well, so be it. Putting my trust in the fame of Puru's lineage, I have fallen into the clutches of a man whose mouth is honey, but whose heart is stone. And now I am made out to be a self-willed wanton. So you are questioning my honor because I trusted you." Now she starts weeping. Sankarava is angry at the king and he says, "Thus does unbridled impulse destroy a person." Now he is not just talking about the king, he is also talking about Shakuntala. That she was impulsive, she did not wait for everybody's consent. And because of that, she is destroyed now. Therefore, a marriage, especially one made in secret, should be contracted after careful scrutiny. So Shakuntala was to blame for all this because she did not pay attention to the details. She did not maintain the decorum, and therefore she is suffering now. And then the king says, "Why are you talking like this to me based upon the words of this lady?" So again, that question about the woman's word. The king is directly questioning Sankarava that why is he believing a woman? And based on a woman's word, why is he judging a king? Now Sankarava says something which is reasonably good. He says, "Oh no, that would be quite preposterous, would it not? The words of one who from birth has grown up uninstructed in deceit. Shakuntala has grown up in a situation, in a surrounding where she is not taught how to deceive people. Should carry no weight. Her words should not have value. But those who study the deception of others as an esteemed art, because the king is basically a politician at heart and he has to know about politics, about diplomacy, which involves deceit, are infallible speakers of truth. So this woman who is a naive person, who has grown up in an innocent environment will not be believed. Instead of that, we will believe a person who practices diplomacy and politics every day." And then the king says, "Why do you think I will deceive her?" And then they go on conversing, nothing comes out of it. The sages prepare to leave, and before that, Saradvata says, "O king, why this banding of words? See, we are not interested in talking. We have carried out our preceptor's orders, so we have delivered the message. We shall leave presently. It is not our duty to stay back and convince you. This then is your wife? Accept her or abandon her. A husband's dominion over his wife is absolute. Gautabi, lead the way." They completely abandon Shakuntala. That, see, this is your property. You keep it, you throw away in the garbage can. We don't care. We have done our duty, now we'll go back. The sages prepare to leave. Shakuntala she's in a sort of panic. What's this? Here I am, betrayed by this cheat, and you are also abandoning me. Remember what Konno had said, that don't come here again alone. Come back only when you are accepted by your husband, when you are happily beside him, placed beside him, have borne him a son, then come back. So these sages, they understand that Karna doesn't want Shakuntala taken back. Gautami is feeling sad and she is asking the other sages that please, what should we do? She's weeping and coming after us. Sankarava is now saying, you forward girl, note the expression forward girl. Why is Shakuntala called forward? Because she is not staying at her husband's place. The husband doesn't want to accept her. And she is going back to her own home. That action is called violating the rules of society, violating the rules of being a woman. Are you asserting your independence? You are going away from your husband's house. No, Shakuntala doesn't know what to do because this is not her house. And she clearly understands that the hermitage is not her house. So this sense of homelessness, this sense of lack of belonging anywhere, this has been the destiny of women after women in literature. Women after women. Sankarava says, if you are what the king says you are, what will your father have to do with you? So if you are a fallen woman, as the king has said that he has not married you, but you are bearing somebody's child, then what will Karna do with you? A stain on his family? But as you know, your own conduct to be pure, even servitude in your husband's house will be welcome to you. So be a servant here. That will be better than going back to your father's house. Stay here. We are leaving. The king is better than Sankarava in what he says. He says, O ascetic, why do you give this lady false hopes? The moon wakes only night blooming lilies. The sun day lotuses only. The man with mastery over his passions turns away from the touch of another's wife. So why are you giving her false hopes that she can stay here, be the servant and then eventually win me somehow? I will never look at her the way I look at my wife. She is somebody else's wife. And then they again engage into a conversation which is very disturbing somehow. And then the high priest comes to a conclusion and offers an alternative solution. What is his weird solution? High priest says, supposing we do it this way. The king says, instruct me, your reverence. He says, let the gracious lady who is with child stay in my house till she gives birth. So he offers his house as home to Shakuntala while she is going through the pregnancy. I shall tell you why I suggest this. The seers have already foretold that your firstborn is destined to be sovereign of the world. So the prophets have made this prophecy that you're going to have a son who's going to rule the world. If the sage's daughter should give birth to a son, bearing all the marks of sovereignty on his person, if she gives birth to a son who looks like a king's son, and he somehow feels that he has the power to judge that, I don't know, I mean, those days were not the days of genetics and microbiology. I don't know how they would understand whose son who was, but assuming that they had some sort of arrangement, some sort of method to understand whose child Shakuntala was giving birth to. But the important point is, if she gave birth to a son, if she gave birth to a daughter, then definitely that is not Dushyanta's, because Dushyanta's prophets had told him that he would be father of a son who would rule the world. Okay, so condition 1, the child should be male. Condition 2, that male child should have sign of sovereignty, royalty. I don't know what that means. Then offering her your felicitations, receive her into your royal apartments, then accept her. So a woman's position will be sealed or sanctioned only when she is a mother in a convenient way, suiting the purpose of the king. If it turns out otherwise, then the only thing to do is take her back to her father. The king agrees. The priest says, okay, then follow me. Shakuntala is totally, you cannot believe what's happening now. And she says, oh gracious goddess, Mother Earth, open wide and take me in. Does that make you remember another woman far removed in time, but in the same country, addressing the same Mother Earth to give her protection? Because women in this, not just India, but sadly reflected in the, so poignantly in the literatures of ancient India, they found no place to call their home except the place beyond this life. And they wanted to be absorbed into the earth because the earth was the ultimate mother. She seeks this refuge, this shelter, when her husband asks her, not once but twice, to prove her purity. She takes this refuge when, here as we see, her existence depends on the judgment of society. We know about a woman asking for help when her own kinsmen wanted to disrobe her, take away her honor before the eyes or in front of the eyes of her 5 potent husbands. She didn't ask for the help of Mother Earth, of course. She asked the help of a friend. Okay, so let's not digress. She is definitely totally given up right now. She exits. And then something happens again off stage. And important things always happen off stage. A voice off stage says, oh, a marvel has occurred. And then the king says, what happened? And then the high priest comes back and he says, my lord, something quite marvelous has just occurred. What is it? No sooner had Kanno's disciples left on their journey back than the young girl, cursing her stars, wept aloud, flinging her hands up. And then a flash of light in a woman's shape from Apsara pool snatched her up and vanished straight away. Interesting. Apsara's pool. Now we know that Shakuntala is the daughter of an Apsara. Who knows, maybe her divine mother came to her help or something. But here also we see a divine force intervening. We have seen divine force intervening in Draupadi's misery. We have seen divine force intervening in Sita's misery. And now we see divine force intervening in Shakuntala's pain, in Shakuntala's misery. Men failed miserably. Gods had to interfere. As if helping out a woman needed more than human strength. It needed the strength of divinity to rescue a woman. The king ends this act through another little very short soliloquy and says, I have spurned the sage's daughter, it is true. He's feeling guilty that somehow he is not a bad person at heart, he's a good guy, and he feels bad that I have made this woman go away having no recollection of marrying her. He is justifying to himself. Yet, the poignant ache in my heart, there is a feeling of pain inside him, and through that pain, somehow he feels, validates, it seems, the truth of her assertion that I had. So, in a way, Shakuntala's disappearance begins Dushyanta's journey of recollection. Durvasa had said that the king would need a token to remember Shakuntala. But here we see that maybe true love is more powerful than curses. But somehow, here also, Who knows? Maybe because Shakuntala was rescued by some divine force, therefore Dushyanta wants to believe that maybe she is right. You cannot classify Indian drama clearly as comedies or tragedies. Shakuntala is definitely not a tragedy. But in moments like these, we realize that these characters who eventually find happiness, some kind of success, they go through so much suffering in the process that we cannot call it comic. This is more like an epic presented through the medium of drama, with its grandeur, with its moments of both happiness and sadness, elation and sorrow. While one act gives you moments of joy, another act makes you weep, some other act makes you feel light-hearted, and some other makes you question the society which acts as a setting of these plays. So this is the true spirit of Kalidasa's plays, the true spirit of ancient Sanskrit drama, that it is beyond classifications of the comic or the tragic. This is more in tune with life itself. It is more in tune with the evocation of the rasas, and not just one single rasa. In these acts, especially Act 4, Act 5, we see multiple emotions evoked in the minds of the audience. And we will see how these emotions are further manipulated, are further churned out of our systems as we read the 6th, the 7th acts. So I end today hoping to find you all again with me when we will be doing the next act. To tell me if you have liked today's class. Comment if you feel that you also feel in a same manner or in a different manner about the way in which I have explained about Dushyanta's treatment of Shakuntala at court. What do you feel? What is your impression of the characters? Do let me know. Also let me know of the other texts which I can analyze for you. Thank you for being subscribers. And if you are not yet a subscriber, then I'm not going to be very happy with that. So see you all next time. Till then, have a great time. Bye-bye.